Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and this recording is being done around I just got back from my cruise for podcasters. It's been a hectic few days, and I am now sick. I feel like that was inevitable between a lot of sunlight, not a lot of sleeping, and then, trying to stay up every night, catch up on work online afterward. I have reached the inevitable point of stuffy nose and sore throat, so it was worth it. It was worth it. I just apologize ahead of time. Luckily, our guest is not sick and he sounds great, so we're gonna have a good time by just having him take over the mic here. But with that being said, I'm excited to host him because while we've talked about addiction and recovery a lot on the show, I really like our guest's approach, which, having read through his bio, it's sometimes you can do all the right things. You can do all the healing and you can feel great, but there's something just almost eating away at you on the inside, some kind of feeling of negativity that you just can't classify. And our guest, it took him quite a while after healing to discover what that was. So hopefully we're going to save y'all some time here by helping you out. And maybe if you're just starting the journey of healing, going to start it, or have been healed for a while but feel something wrong, this episode hopefully will speak to you. So we are here with Mr. Patrick Casey. Would you please go ahead and introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Whiskey. Hey guys, I'm Patrick Casey, and as Mr. Whiskey said, I have been in recovery from drugs and alcohol for 22 years. This past August, we celebrated 22 years, which is killer.
Nice.
I got sober at 19 years old, so it's been a long, long journey. I was fortunate enough to hit my bottom at 19 years old, and we can go into that at some point if you want to. But yeah, I was fortunate enough to hit my bottom at 19. So, I got to kind of grow up in recovery chronologically
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
emotionally and spiritually and everything too, right? So like, it's been a really cool path, really cool journey to be able to, learn how to be a man, learn how to be adult, all the while, getting over drugs and alcohol. And like you said, still kind of hitting more bottoms along the way because life continues to happen, and it's just another growth stage that we continue to come in contact with. So, and then we either, overcome it or we let it get the best of us. And so, my choice has always been to persevere, no matter how uncomfortable I get, and just to continue to move on forward because, I don't want to slip backwards. I don't want to go back to the life I had before.
Of course. And it's almost comical in a sense that your rock bottom is where some people are just starting at
Hmm.
19. Some people are just starting. And
Yeah,
like you
I mean, I
said,
didn't
they're
even have a legal drink of alcohol, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, for sure. So let's just jump right into that. 19 years old, hitting rock bottom there. So I mean, let's talk a little bit about your upbringing and what factors played into at such a young age getting involved with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, so I'm always kind of mindful. I always say about kind of towing the line. I don't want to throw my family under the bus. I don't want to like
Right, of course.
paint a bad negative picture, right? I mean, heck, they might listen to this one day. But for me, my perspective, because that's what it's all about. I have two younger sisters. I'm the oldest of three. They might have a completely different perspective, right? A different um, idea of like what they experience compared to me.
Right.
My interpretation was that there was a lot of kind of up and down turmoil. There was love, there was affection, but there was also abuse. There was also, drinking in the household. There was fighting. There was, maybe some neglect, maybe just a lot of confusion, where I kind of had to walk around on eggshells, I felt like, because I never kind of knew day after day. Like I had to kind of gauge the temperature of the house when I woke up in the morning, right? Like what kind of mood is everybody in? How do I need to act and behave today? Because the last thing I want to do is set everything off. Or conversely, I would say, I don't care. And I would just go into a rage myself, even as a kid, and just cause a
Right.
bunch of chaos. That would make things worse. Like I always say I was a bad kid, but looking back now, I wasn't a bad kid. I was just kind of troubled, right? Like I was
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
always in trouble in school. Like I was always sitting at the teacher's desk in front of the class, right? Like I was always like, Mr.
Yeah.
Casey, come up here. You need to sit by the desk by me. And I was having to, write stuff on the chalkboard like in The Simpsons, like Bart Simpson.
Yeah,
That
just
was
like that.
me. That was me back in the 80s. Like I was having to write on the chalkboard. I was having to dust the erasers in school. Teachers always knew ahead of time, like, me and my best friend who lived in my neighborhood, they would say, like, you need to keep Patrick and Sean separate. Like, you need to keep them away from each other, right? Like that
Right.
was always like going into the class. I did stuff like ran off babysitters. I ran out of the house while being babysat and like, scared the heck and everything out of everybody.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, none of that really makes me an addict or an alcoholic per se. What happened was basically like 11 years old, I started smoking marijuana for whatever reason. It was just like a natural, I wasn't afraid for whatever
Mm.
reason. I wasn't afraid, I don't know consciously if I was seeking to feel okay. And like if I thought like, hey, that might be something the cool kids are doing, and maybe that's something that would make me fit in, or maybe that's something that would make me feel okay.
Right.
Because I never had trouble fitting in. I was always a friend among friends. I played sports, I was always like the class clown. Like I always had plenty of attention, right? But for whatever reason, I started smoking marijuana, and like you probably have known and heard, and everybody, like that can be a gateway. And for me, it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
It bled over into literally every substance you could mention to me and ask me right now. Most likely, I tried it and did it probably for an extended period of time. And once I got my driver's license at 16 years old, I never went to a full day of school. I was always skipping class. I was always under the influence of something. I was always just needing to not feel the way I felt, right? I always needed to be somebody different. I always needed to
Right.
blend in with people. I always had to have some substance to numb things. And so yeah, man, Mr. Whiskey, looking back now, yeah, chances are I was, numbing my traumas. I was escaping the turmoil that I grew up in, for lack of better words, right? So I was always trying to just feel better, feel different. Like to me, I always say a fun Friday night or Saturday night with my friends was walk around the shopping plazas at like 10 or 12 years old, smoking little cigarette butts.
Yeah.
Looking around for little cigarette butts and ashtrays around the floor and smoking cigarette butts, getting a little nicotine buzz. Like that's ridiculous looking back now. That's so young. Of course, the older we get, we look back like, yeah, 19 seems really young. 16 even seems younger, but when you're in the middle of it, you don't feel that young.
Right.
You feel like you're invincible. So what happened was at 19 years old, I tell a story all the time. My parents were off at a bowling league. They were entrusted me to watch my two younger sisters at home on a Friday night. They came home from bowling and they found me, their son, slumped over on the couch with heroin, needle, spoon, belt tied around my arm. And so I was awoken to like my dad just violently shaking me, my mom hollering and screaming in the background. And it was just a complete mess, right? So
Wow.
I was out of excuses. It wasn't like the other times when they caught me smoking weed or they caught me like,
Yeah, this is
drinking
different.
alcohol. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, I was just trying it, or hey, so and so introduced me to it, so I just wanted to try it. Like I was already off the deep end by then. And the thing is that I've been wanting for about 6 months to ask for help. And I just didn't know how to ask for help. I wanted to get help. I knew what I was doing was only going to end a couple bad ways. It wasn't going to end good. I wasn't going to just grow out of it. And so it took what it took. And so, I believe my higher power intervened because it was a completely unusual circumstance the way it all went down that Friday night for me to even put myself in that position to pass out on the couch and, be in the position that I was in. Because I was never reckless. I was always very careful, meticulous. I was always, I kept it well hidden
Right.
from my family, right? And so this was just like a very unusual night that I think I manifested it to happen because I've been wanting help for 6 months. I just thought maybe should I tell my parents I'm addicted to pain pills because that doesn't sound as bad as shooting heroin? Like, how do I do this? And I just never got the courage to do that. And so that's kind of how it all laid out. And from there, the rest is history, as they say, right? Like I was taken off to rehab treatment and I did 46 days of rehab. I did 6 or 7 months in a halfway house. And then me and, some other young knuckleheads like myself all kind of moved into a place together and we just did sobriety recovery stuff and on and on and on. And so much more has happened since then. I mean, that was again 22 years ago.
So did you graduate high school on time or did you have to go back or how did that work?
Yeah, again, it was kind of like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation. Like you would never know how bad off I was. I graduated probably like a 3.4. I don't know what the statute of limitations are, but yeah, I definitely cheated a lot. In high school, I definitely cheated to get by, but I was a
Right.
smart kid. I was a smart kid. I probably earned most of the GPA that I had. So yeah, I graduated, and then I did 1 year of college at Augusta State University, and that entire year, my first and only year of college up to that point was just horrendous, horrible. I was shooting dope on the school campus, and I was going into class completely oblivious to anything that was going on as far as tests go. I remember one time walking to a chemistry class, and they're like, "All right, take out your number 2 pencil. It's time for an exam." And I'm looking around, going, "Did you guys know we had an exam?" Because I was just completely shut. I had no idea. I'm like,
Yeah.
here I am, like failing classes, which is not what I do. And since then, I went back to school. I got my bachelor's and master's and an
Yeah. Yeah.
associate, all in sobriety. Like that, I'm a very good student. But this year I was not. And so it was a tough time. So yeah, to answer your question, that's pretty much what happened.
Okay, yeah. I know plenty of people who aren't high and still don't know that we have an exam. I think there's plenty of those people. But what I'll say is in a recent episode with Jen Ally, she talked about how honestly for her, rehab didn't work until the fifth time around because it wasn't something she wanted for herself necessarily. But you're talking
Mhm.
about one time at rehab. So what were the feelings going on in you when you went in and while you were there? I know you talked about wanting to get help, and it's kind of paradoxical when you're a kid and want to get help for something like that because it's nowadays it's not as rare, but that's a pretty rare situation, right? So there's some judgment like, oh my goodness, you're a kid and you're doing drugs, but at the same time, it's like you're a kid, you got caught up in the wrong stuff, we want to help you. So it's like there's more feelings of help there and then more feelings of judgment. So it's like, especially when it comes to your parents, it's so
Mhm.
definitely a lot of stigmas around not wanting to get help or being worried about as a kid, how is it going to affect the rest of your life? If they put you in somewhere or, at that point in your life, you're like, man, I'm just a kid. How is this going to affect going, especially like when you're in high school, is this going to affect my ability to get a job, to go to college? Like what is going to be on the record and what's not? So I totally get that. But you talked about wanting to get help and you end up in rehab. So how was that whole experience?
It was good because yeah, like you said, I was one of the youngest. I was 19. I think you had to be 18 or older to, for the adult section. And I don't know if there was anybody 18 or not while I was there. But yeah, I was one of the youngest. And I always kind of excelled being around older guys. Like even as a kid, playing basketball, soccer, sports in the neighborhood and stuff. I always like hung out with the older kids. I had my friends that were my age, but I kind of gravitated towards older kids. And I don't know if that's because maybe I didn't have older siblings or something, but I always did well with that. And so I felt immense relief when I walked in. To answer your first question, when I walked into the treatment center, it was like that feeling of just like this deep sigh, just like, I, I just had this overwhelming feeling that I'm going to be okay. I just had this feeling that like I don't have to run anymore. I don't have to pretend to be somebody I'm not. Like I'm done. And so that was helpful, maybe compared to the person you talked about that took 5 times. I work in substance abuse as a nurse practitioner now, so I treat people like me all the time. I treat a lot of people with mental health, drug and alcohol addiction. I treat a lot of veterans like yourself. I treat a lot of first responders, people from all walks of
Right.
life. And yeah, I mean, dude, some of them are like 20 times in treatment, 30 times in treatment, et cetera, right? And they've been trying forever. And it's not because I'm some special, unique person. It's just for whatever reason, I was ready. And, I think my higher power put me in the position and put all the right people in my life at the right time that gave me the chance to either grasp onto it or to let it go and to not take advantage of it. So I took advantage of it. And it was easy because I was very immature, obviously, as a 19-year-old. And they say when you start doing drugs or alcohol at a young age, your brain kind of slows down and stops developing, right? So I was lucky enough to be around a lot of older guys who were very encouraging and supportive. And of course, I always heard I wish I would have got it at your age. I wish I would have got it at your
Yeah,
age.
yeah.
And
I
on
already
one hand,
saw
I
that
get a
coming.
little defensive to be like, "Whoa, you think I'm not that bad?" Like. So I get a little defensive, but I knew, and now looking back, I get it because like now being 41 years old, 19 is young as hell. But when I'm 19, 19 doesn't feel young, especially the
Yeah,
life
yeah,
that I
yeah.
lived. It doesn't feel like it's a young age. So yeah, it was a really good experience. I made a lot of really good friends, and I started to experience, what it was like to really like have like true camaraderie where people could open up and people could cry in these group therapy sessions and stuff I wasn't aware of, like, we're men, we're not supposed to cry, we're not supposed to have feelings, especially in front of other people, so I kind of got to experience that, and that helped me feel more comfortable during the times I was there and didn't really know what to do with my feelings. Like, for instance, I was there, I think like 5 or 6 days in, and I was kind of starting to feel feelings, and I was starting to remember some childhood things, if you will. And I was starting to really feel poorly about myself. And my first instinct was like, I need to leave. I need to go jump over that wall. I need to go get high. Like, I'm
Right.
not doing this. The hell with this. Screw this. And somebody pulled me aside and said, "What's up?" I said, "Man, I'm starting to like really remember some of these things, and I don't like this. I don't really want to talk about this." And they're like, "Dude, you got to, like, if like this is what makes or breaks you. This is where your recovery
Right.
really starts." So I went in front of the group and I just vomited all my stuff, man. And I had that first experience with like what it's like to open up and bare my soul to other people and really feel like, wow, I didn't get shamed. Nobody laughed at me. Nobody bullied me afterward. And so I had that first feeling of like being vulnerable, but also being safe and secure at the same time. And so like that's helped me in my sobriety and other stuff we'll talk about later, where I was able to open up in front of people and kind of say like, hey, this is who I am. For whatever reason, I still have these struggles, and this is how I'm going to get better. But if I just ignore it and keep stuffing it down or distract myself with dating different women or getting different jobs or spending money or focusing on all these other things, I'm doing the same thing I did. I'm just not using drugs or alcohol to
Right.
ignore my feelings and my traumas. So my coach, she says you have to feel it to heal it. So if I'm not feeling it, it's not going to get better. I'm just going to delay the inevitable.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people, whether they were former addicts or recovery specialists who have been on the show, talk about in AA, they talk about this 12-step program. Is that also involved with rehab, or they have some form of that y'all follow through?
So some rehabs are what they call 12-step focus, where they do, for lack of better words, push that on the clients that are there.
Okay.
They take them to 12-step meetings, or they have people come in that hold 12-step meetings. Other places use alternative programs because some people will
Okay.
say, I did that AA crap or I did that 12-step crap. It doesn't work. I want to do something else. And so they'll
Yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
cater to those people. So you don't like actually do the steps in those places, but they do talk about it. They kind of get you started with that. And for people like me who were ignorant, didn't know what AA was, 12 steps or anything like that, it was like, oh, okay, that's what it is. And then it's like, okay, go get a sponsor. And then when you leave here, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Like that's where the work begins. And then hopefully you'll continue. I always say like, 12-step meetings and programs don't have a monopoly, but there's a reason why it's been around for like 85 plus years, and it's translated
For
in,
sure.
over 200 languages, and it's in, 200 plus countries and stuff like that for a reason. So
Yeah.
it's obviously working for millions and millions of people, but it doesn't mean it's the only way. So I try to like impress that, especially upon my patients and clients that I work with, because I treat them, as the practitioner, I'm really usually treating them with medications and going over lab work with them. I don't really talk a lot about sobriety. I kind of keep my recovery anonymous because I don't want to blur the two things unless there's like kind of a life or death
Right,
situation
right.
where I think it might really make a real helpful impact. And so sometimes I run into them outside of work at places and they're like, "Oh, you're in recovery?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, "Oh, I thought something was different about you. You're not like the other doctors and practitioners I'm used to
Yeah.
talking to." So that's always a lot of good feedback that I get. So I really enjoy the work, man, because I get to treat people that are in all different phases of their recovery. So it's really really rewarding to be able to do that, and I get to make a living doing what I love. Like, how many people get to say that? I
Right.
don't hate my job. I don't dread going to work every day. I've been there before I went back to school and got an education. I don't want to experience that.
Yeah. So we talked about the beginning and now we're at present day, but let's talk about that long in between. You sobered up, you were going to school again, you started working at some point. But as we alluded to in the very beginning of the episode, we talked about something not feeling right. Can we kind of elaborate upon those feelings and what exactly that looked like in your life? Because it could be different for everyone, but in general, this just unsettling feeling that something's wrong, and maybe it's manifesting in the world through actions or behaviors or maybe just thoughts, but can we get into that?
Yeah, so even though, like you said, I had been sober for a long time, I'd been helping tons and tons of people. Gotten help from other people. I've done like my own journeys with therapy. There was a point when I was, I think, like 9 months sober. I took antidepressants for a year and a half. I went down that route, and I didn't really need them for a long period of time. I did therapy for a couple of years, like I said, and something was just going on even about 18 months ago where I wasn't even aware of it. I just kind of thought, maybe I'm not practicing my recovery stuff well enough because like I'm still blowing up in traffic. I'm still having like rage
Right.
episodes. I was married before. I was married for 4 years. I was with the same woman for 10 years, and 4 of those years we were married. And there's a lot of things I won't get into with that. We don't need to, but
Yeah.
we can if we want. But basically the marriage just didn't work out. But a lot of it was my, I was having attitudes. I was kind of playing out like the marriage I grew up experiencing with my family, right? So like I was doing
Okay.
the silent scorn, having the rage episodes, and there was just a lot involved to where I wasn't being the person I thought I should be as a sober man and a man who's like got a really good life built up. And so that marriage ended. I got into a new relationship a little while later, and we're still together for 7 years now, and it's wonderful. So what happened was my girlfriend was following this lady who does podcasts just like yourself, but she's been doing it for like 10 years. She has a really big following, and she was holding a live event in Southern California where she does a lot of really cool healing modalities and really cool
Yeah.
processes. And
Yeah.
I've been hearing my girlfriend talk about this lady she was following and stuff. She's like, "Hey, I'm going out to this event. Really, would you come with me? I'm not really comfortable going out there. Like,
Right.
I've only talked to these people on Zoom and stuff. Like, would you come with me?" And I've been, sober a while, and I'm like open-minded, like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll get a little bit of self-help or something out of it. Like, okay, let's go. And I went there. And again, I wasn't really aware that I probably really, looking back, I probably never really slowed down long enough to acknowledge the fact that I really wasn't still feeling complete for some reason, that I
Right.
still wasn't really acknowledging the fact that like I don't know how to take compliments from people. I still don't love myself to the extent that I feel like I ought to.
Right.
I still talk really negative to myself. I'm like that really critical parent to myself. Like I'm
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
doing all that. When I make a mistake, I'm like, "You stupid idiot." And I'm just like really hard on myself, right? Like I really have a lot of expectations on myself. And when I fall short, I just beat the hell out of myself. But I didn't really realize and think it was affecting me because how could it? I have this great profession. I live down here in Jupiter, Florida, near the beach. I have a motorcycle. I'm in this boxing thing that I do. I play soccer. I have all these really cool hobbies and go out on the boat all the time and fish, and I have a beautiful girl and a good income. Like nothing could be wrong with me, right? When you look at it from the outside, but you can't
Right.
see my insides. You can't see that there's still like this rawness and woundedness that I really wasn't even paying attention to. That's a long way around about saying I was at this event, and we were at the end of the event. It was a 2.5 day event, and we were passing a microphone around, and it was about 40 people. And we were basically like taking a turn for about 5 or 10 minutes talking about what we experienced, what we got out of the event, any breakthroughs. And I was holding the microphone. I was looking over at my girlfriend, and I just started crying in front of this room of like 40 people. I don't know any of them
Wow.
except my girlfriend, Caitlin,
Right. Right.
crying in front of them. And I'm just like, I want to love myself like she loves me. Like, I want to look at myself the way that she looks at me.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
why am I not there? Like, you don't
Mm.
understand all of the accomplishments and accolades and everything I've done, but those are just superficial, right? Like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
am I not there? And so the coach came up to me, the lady that was holding the event, her name is JJ Flazanes. She came up to me and she said, "I can help you. Like this weekend shouldn't end on a note like that. Like this needs to be better for you. I can help you." And I was just like, for whatever reason, I was just like, sign me up. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means. I live in Florida. You live in California, but all right, let's do it. And that turned into this 6 month long program I did, which was obviously over Zoom, but we also had some live events where we got together a couple of times during that 6 months, and I just had just breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. And man, it's just like completely transformed my life again. Like it was like another growth again, another advancement in my life, in my spirituality. And so what's happened is like I've taken on coaching now. Like I want to be able to coach, especially other men like us who might suffer that. I don't want to
Yeah.
be like pinned down to just helping people with addictions. Like I want to be able to also help like the everyday man who struggles with the same stuff with anger, rage, dissatisfaction in their relationships, wondering why things aren't working out, mental health, like maybe nothing at all to do with drugs and alcohol. And the cool thing is like we can do it like this. Like we can talk over Zoom. We can
Yeah.
come up with a program. We come up with steps and modalities. And
Right.
so I can pass on the stuff that I use that was super helpful, and then even more that I'm starting to implement and share that with some other guy. Like that's amazing to me that I can do it all over the world. As a nurse practitioner, I can only help you if you work in Florida. And again, I don't want to really help people medically anymore. I want to help people from the inside, really get down to the core cause of everything. Because that's what was transforming to me was figure out my core wounds, which are feeling defective, feeling devalued, and feeling disapproved of. So whenever I'm getting triggered and one of those things are happening, I have this reaction, right? I either get like super pissed and rageful, defensive, I retreat, I isolate, I withdraw, whatever the case is, depend on the situation. And so like having that knowledge was helpful, but that wasn't enough. I had to take it to the next level, which was like, now I got to do some hard things to change that thought process, right? Like we can't think our way into like acting differently. We have to act our way into thinking differently. So the more I take these actions and do things that might seem like really silly or stupid or don't make any sense, like what does this have to do with becoming a better person or changing my negative thought patterns? It ends up happening. And over time, it's like, wow, I do these things and I look back and I go, oh, okay, it didn't kill me. That didn't hurt. It was scary, but life is about doing scary, hard things, right? Like I'm sure you have millions of examples with your experience, being in the military and doing this podcast and everything you've been through. Like you do hard things that your brain might say 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't do it. And you say, no,
Right.
we're doing it anyways. We're gonna
Yeah.
freaking do it. And then you do it, and you come on the other side and you go, that was awesome. I'm going to do
Hmm.
this other thing. And then you build a track record where you start to have a belief now, and now your habits start to change, right? So, man, I want to be able to share that with other people because there's tons of dudes like us that are struggling, and there's women who are struggling with their man and they want to get their man help, and they don't really know how to communicate that to their man. So, I've been coming up with some
Right.
online courses I'm doing. I have a free masterclass that I did that anybody can access if they go to it. It's breaking through destructive patterns. And right now I have another one that's about to come out towards the end of this month, actually, about it's for women really, or people who are, have a man in their life. It's called five effective ways to communicate with the man struggling in your life. It's going to be helpful for people to communicate. So whether you have a son, a friend, a cousin, a husband, boyfriend, whatever the case is, so that you can communicate with the man without feeling like you're nagging him and pressuring him and being a pester to him, to help him
For
maybe
sure.
find like the courage to go be vulnerable and to get some help. And sometimes it's just leading by example, you know?
Yeah, and you said something so important, which this isn't for addicts only. And what I'll say is what you talked about, the negative thoughts, the self-hate, the not feeling accomplished, all the criticism, all of that is something that we all feel. But when you're an addict, and formerly, and you're recovering, you try to associate everything negative in your life to the addiction, almost in a blame way. And so, like you said, you're saying to yourself, but I'm not doing the drugs anymore. Why am I still this? I'm not drinking anymore. Why am I still this? And then we realize that some of our flaws aren't because of the addiction. They're just who we are.
Mhm.
And maybe not addiction. Maybe you were blaming it on the trauma. You're saying, well, it's this particular relationship, and once I get in a new relationship, things will change the way I talk or the way I react. Or maybe it was even the military environment, for example. You're saying it's just because I'm stressed because of work or this and that. And then we find out that it's something that we're all going with, and maybe it's something we need to work on independent of, or those main negative things in our lives that affect our behavior. And so I think it's so important for anyone who's listening, right? It's not just about being in recovery or being a former addict. It's about emotional suppression in general. And I think Mr. Casey talked about You could have, if you hadn't gone to that podcasting event, you could have just continued to suppress it, push it down, be like, it's just a stupid thought, or it's just a phase, or, if I, sometimes it can affect you where you're like, I need to accomplish more and more and
Hmm.
more. And then you're just pushing yourself to your limit, burning out, trying to achieve stuff and still feeling empty. So I really appreciate you, coming on the show and going on other shows and creating these programs to help people. I think it's important, like you said, when it comes to a man and a woman, if we're not recognizing or understanding this voice inside of ourselves, it's going to be even harder to communicate to someone else what it is. And so many people will just brush it off and be like, oh, it's just a bad thought, or it's just passing, just as we try to do. It's so important to have someone who says, you know what, no, that's a really bad thing, and you need to address it by doing X, Y, or Z. And so I know you have a website, Mr. Casey, and I want to plug it here for everyone. I mean, you talked about your programs and all of that. I mean, what can we really find on your website that would be helpful to everyone?
Yeah, so it's right now it's a landing page. So if you go to patrickcaseyjr.com, that's patrickcaseyjr.com, it'll take you to put in your email and your name, and it'll take you to my master class. And in that, it's 60 minutes long. It's a video I shot with PowerPoints, and it'll explain a little bit more about my background, a little bit more about what I've been through, and a little bit more about, again, the steps you can take to get through some of your self-destructive patterns. And in that, towards the end, I have information if you want to do some coaching, or I offer some resources in there, like some really good podcasts that I recommend, some really good books that I recommend, some techniques that you can use, everything that's free, basically, that you can use on your own to kind of get started. And then, I can also do a free 15-20 minute consultation call to see if, like, what's going on with you. Do you want to, do I resonate with you at all? Am I somebody you're like, I don't want to talk to you ever again? Or like, dude, you're awesome. Like, this really fits. I want to work with you. Like, we can go over that kind of stuff too. And then again, eventually, probably towards the end of this month, on that landing page too, I'll be able to direct people to the other class that I have coming up. I'm on Instagram as well, at Patrick Casey Jr. You can find me on Instagram too. And on there, you can, see a lot of cool videos and pictures. And, like we were talking beforehand, I've done some boxing matches, and, won Florida Golden Gloves for Masters,
Nice.
which is like over 40 years old, which sounds cooler than it is, but basically, you beat up other guys that are over 40 years old that are in your weight class. And that's something I've done because of this journey. I got into boxing at 37 years old. I'm 41. That was one of those big scary things that I was like, well, I'm going to try it out and do it. And I really like it, enjoy it. And I'm
Yeah.
fairly okay. I'm fairly okay at it. So there's been a lot of cool things. And on the Instagram, you'll see, some other stuff I used to do as a nurse practitioner with some of the charity events and cancer walks and stuff that we did back in the day. So there's like a lot of cool stuff on the Instagram you can find, and some reels from some podcasts I've been on, such as like here talking with you. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
cool resources on my Instagram. And it's cool if somebody wants to talk, or if they have somebody else they think like might benefit from getting help, like I can
Right,
always
for
talk to them
sure.
about
For
that, right?
anyone.
Because a lot of us always want to help somebody else. We always know somebody that has problems that we think would benefit. And if only they would, make a change, they could, we can see it in other people that they're struggling, but we can also see like how better their life can be if they were to make some changes.
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll have that in the description below. And yes, Mr. Casey, when he was talking about the podcast, he was talking about Couple of Nukes is on
That's
there, so
right.
check that out. Yeah, that's
I was
that's
gonna
the show
say.
that was the show he was referring to. But yeah, Mr. Casey, before we sign off here, just I mean, what's the last bit of advice you would leave us with for those who are currently having that negative voice in their head, whether it's criticism, whether it's just this feeling of unaccomplishment, whatever it may be. I mean, what would be your advice to them? Because not all of us are going to end up at a podcast live session crying in front of 40 people, right? But it will manifest some way or another. But what's a way we can be proactive and kind of jump ahead of that kind of moment and take care of it?
So for me, it is doing appreciations. It's writing down or talking to somebody and literally going through like everything I appreciate, like filling up an entire notebook page down to the simplest stuff, like I appreciate having my driver's license. I appreciate having all four of my extremities. I appreciate my health. I appreciate where I live, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then also the other thing is to help get me out of that negative mindset is you write down like anywhere from like three, four, five things in the corner of my page of like things I'm looking forward to, right? So those might be things that are actually about to come up in my life, or those might be things I want to happen, right? Like I'm looking forward to having the relationship that's just going to knock my socks off. I would look forward to finding that job, that career that's going to land me all the money in the world I need to feel
Mm.
independent and to be, able to do the things that I want to do with my life. Or it might be I'm looking forward to going to that concert I have scheduled next weekend with my friends. Like, so it's stuff that can help kind of get me out of that negative mindset. Because if you're like me, man, it's everything is just like you look at things from the pessimistic, the glasses half empty side of stuff. So the little bit that I do, and sometimes I do stuff, little things too, Mr. Whiskey, and I'll leave it at this is like if I'm kind of stressed and not feeling good, I might just think about my girlfriend's dog. Thinking about my girlfriend's dog, Lena, man, it just makes me smile when I think about it. I might think about my girlfriend, Caitlin, our relationship, and that just kind of makes me smile. So I find things that kind of make me smile on the inside. And sometimes I just smile and just smiling, even a fake smile makes me start to kind of feel a little bit better. Because man, for so many years, it's just everything was so negative and doom and gloom, man. Like and
Yeah.
you can't do it overnight. You can't go from like super duper duper depressed to like happy, joyous, and free all at once. You have to go in stages, right? Little bit at a time. And so if you have the patience, yeah, start doing some of those things today.
Yeah.
Why wait?
I'm actually reaching down, petting my dog right now. She keeps trying to jump up in my lap. That's why I look
Awesome.
like this. Look
What
like
kind
I
of
was leaning
dog?
in, and like she's. Come here. I'll
Yeah,
get.
let's
Yeah.
see her.
Yeah, she's my little Chihuahua baby. But
Oh, look at her. How
she
old is
was
she?
her nails are a little long, and I was just sitting here and I hear the little click click
Look,
click click, and then
yeah,
she started
yep.
like pacing circles around my chair, and I was like, "Here, I'll pet you so you stop walking in circles."
Yeah.
It's
She's like, time's up. She's like,
I know, I know, I
It's
know.
been an hour. We got to go out.
She's so small, but you put her in an empty apartment with me, and like she was drinking her water. It's just like there's a waterfall over there, you know.
You just
But
hear it
yeah, I think
splashing.
yeah, I think it's what you said is so important, you know, just smiling. I know in middle school and high school they always say, "Oh, it takes more muscles to frown than smile, so smile."
Yeah,
Um, but yeah,
yeah.
it also just it's a good thing, and I think, like you said, just appreciation, and especially, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in recovery, just think about where you were. I mean, right? I mean, you think about in Mr. Casey's case, you
Casey.
know, he was, I mean, slumped out in a chair at 19, and now he's helping people every day. Like he said, doing a thing he loves. And just look at where you are, and even if you don't necessarily love your job, how many people could even do your job? How many people are in that position? And like you said, even something as simple as a driver's license or having all four of your extremities, sometimes five of them, you know, how, I
Yeah.
mean, it's just, it's just great, you know, to have all that and to have the life you have. So I agree with you. Appreciation is always so important, especially in recovery. And so, smile, ladies and gentlemen, and if you want to smile, shameless plug, I performed a comedy skit on a cruise, and I'll have that in the link description below, so you can check that out. Hopefully, it
Oh,
makes y'all
killer.
laugh.
Good.
If you're military, you'll appreciate it more. But
Awesome.
yeah, that was one of those things when you were talking about doing something that just requires a bit of bravery that's outside your comfort zone. I mean, I encourage everyone at least once in your life, try to do an open mic. It's 3 minutes, right? I mean, most people are supportive. If you do at a bar, most people are drunk, right? So, but that's one of those things. Or boxing after four
Stand-up comedy
years.
has to be the scariest thing in the entire world.
I
Has to
I
be.
think so.
Has to
I
be.
think so. I
Because
think I'd be
you're
quicker
totally dependent
to.
on everybody's reaction.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Barrett Matthews, he's a great guy. He was my roommate on the cruise. He goes, "Look, the difference between you and me, Mr. Whiskey, is I'm singing, right? So when I'm done, they're either gonna love the song or hate it, but that's at the end. I'm already walking off stage." She goes, "You know, during it, you know, you're telling a joke and it's just silent in the room. That's bad. They're not gonna say nothing till the song is over, and by that time, my nerves are we're good, we're cool." I
It
said, "You
would
know
it
what?
would
That is so accurate."
it would
And
crush me. It would crush me if I told a joke and it was crickets. I'd be like, oh, I need to get off the stage.
yeah, the first time I ever performed at an open mic, and one of my jokes, I guess, was just a younger generation joke, and I had a room full of advanced in years people, really
Yeah,
knowledgeable
yeah.
people, and It was just silent. I'll tell you, there's never been a more painful moment. And you want to talk about being forced to smile.
Yeah, yeah,
The
grin and
secondhand
bear it.
embarrassment I felt of myself, you know,
Grin and bear it.
it's like I zoomed out third person and I was like, look at this clown on stage,
Oh
you
man,
know.
yeah, that's
But
tough.
yeah,
That's tough.
so next time we have Mr. Casey on the show, he won't just be Golden Gloves of Florida, he'll be Golden Mike of Florida due to his
That's
comedy
it.
performances.
That's it. Hey,
That's the
I
looking
never say
forward
never.
to.
I never say never. I've learned never say
Yeah.
never. Yep.
But yeah, Mr. Casey, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a great time. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, you can find him in the description below, both his Instagram and his website. And if you're someone who wants to talk to him in general or about recovery or find out some resources, he's a great source for that. So definitely reach out to him. But Mr. Casey, thank you again for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Mr. Whiskey. I appreciate that, man. Thanks.
Sailing through the ocean blue, nuclear reactors my crew, guiding the ship, the stars as our guide, through the waves we ride, jokes and laughter fill the air. On this voyage we have to share, working together, side by side, as one family we will abide. In the heart of the ship we reside, nuclear operators with pride, powering the vessel with every stride. Our mission, a source of great pride.